We are back here with Front Office 2 Fridays, here with a special guest. Before we get to him, obviously we want to see how his day's going and everything. Josh Shoemaker is going to be our guest here. How's everything going today?
Vic, man, everything's going well, bro. I'm working from home. It's a beautiful sunny day here in California. But yeah, man, excited to be on the podcast and just continue to kind of figure out how I can help this narrative of people wanting to break into sports, and it's a tough thing, right? And just whatever insights that I can provide, and the path that I've taken, everyone's journey is different, and so I think it's a really cool thing. What you're doing is just kind of getting people's stories out there, and I think that's important to understand, the where and the why of how people got and where they're at. So, but other than that, man, great day. Pumped to be here, man.
Absolutely, I'm pumped as well. I know it's been a long time coming. We had a call prior to it, and with sports, right? There's always things that come up and everything. So it's awesome that we were able to find some time that works for both of us. And weather in California can't go wrong with the nice sunny weather. Here in Washington, it's substantially different. You're getting more gloomy days,
Yeah.
more rain and everything. But like you said too, excited to share about your journey and everything. And Josh Shoemaker's the director of operations for the women's lacrosse team at University of Southern California. So if you want, just kind of talk about that position that you're in right now. And obviously you said the season kind of wrapped up here, but would just be curious on how it's been going this season and how much you've obviously been able to take in.
Yeah, I'll start kind of just with our recent ending to the season now. So just completed my third complete season as a director of operations. And so our season goes from kind of early February until end of April, conference tournament, and then the first round of the NCAA tournament's kind of right there, and the middle of early May goes through the end of May. And so completed our first season in the Big Ten. Definitely have some room for improvement, and but we made it to the conference tournament. And so we're the sixth seed, played Michigan 2 weeks ago on the 23rd. Unfortunately, lost that game in the first round. And so the way the lacrosse works, I think there's about 15 or 16 conferences that make up Division I women's lacrosse. And then so each of those conference championships champions gets an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. And then there's probably 13 or 14, give or take, at-large teams. And then that creates the bubble. There's 29 total teams. And so, you win your conference tournament, you're guaranteed a slot. My first year in 2023 as director of operations, we won the Pac-12 championship, which is my background behind me up there in Berkeley. I'm right there. So that was an amazing experience for me. So we transitioned out of the Pac-12 last year. All of our sports are now in the Big Ten, outside of a few, so like the volleyball and like water polo. They're still in the I think it's called the MPSF. It's a separate league. But season went good. We had a strong non-conference showing. They're still building our stadium, Rollinson Stadium, so we were supposed to be in there this spring. We had to wind up playing off-site at an auxiliary field where we played last year. So you're basically, two seasons on the road, whether your home games or not, you're having to get on a bus, go somewhere different. You're not like in your home setting. So, but, wrapping up things now, towards here, the end of May, graduation's coming up. Coaches will be out recruiting, and then I can kind of breathe a little bit and reset. But so going into my role right now, I came out to LA for equipment. I was bulk of my career, which we'll get into on this call, but bulk of my career was equipment management. And so I came out to LA for an equipment management position as the assistant director of equipment. And I had women's soccer, women's lacrosse, men's and women's golf were the teams that I was responsible for. And so, in June of 20, that was November of 21. So June of 22, our operations director left for a different position outside of athletics. I saw an opportunity that was available, and we talked a little bit about this on our call, how we were on a trip to Australia, and, our ops director left right before that. I was with all the coaches and support staff, kind of said, "Hey, I'd like to, get promoted into that role." And so when we got back a couple weeks later, all of that was approved. I had applied, and then in September of 2022 officially took over. And then my first full year, fall of 22 into spring of 23, we won the Pac-12 championship that year, my first year. And then now you flash forward, I just finished my third season overall, fourth total with lacrosse at SC. So it'll be 4 years in November that I've been out here, and that's kind of a snapshot of how I got to where I am today. So I can talk about, I guess, maybe what I do some, or I don't know what how we'll follow up to that.
Yeah, no, it's you talked about it, right? Sports is a grind, and just hearing the story of like being on the equipment side and then making the transition over operations, obviously a big kind of difference because one, you're obviously dealing with equipment, and then other things you're doing the whole operation, obviously figuring out where the practice, where the games are, how are people are going to get to the game,
Yeah.
very strategic things around those lines, and we'll dive deeper in that later in the podcast. But obviously winning the Pac-12, now that it's not a thing anymore, you're going to be, something you look back at being the last, team essentially to, do that, minus obviously the other sports and everything. But the biggest thing that we, see in the podcast and on people's journeys is the college they choose. And I think it's important to showcase every college because I think every college has a specific area for someone and for you, making it, decisions obviously hard for everyone. But when you were in high school, making that decision to go to San Antonio College as well as the University of Incarnate Word, if I'm saying that correct,
Yeah.
what was kind of going through your mind, my man? Because I know for me, I was like, I have no clue where I'm going. I'm going to go community college because I frankly just need 2 more years to figure out my life.
Yeah. I didn't want to go to college, to be honest, right out of high school. I didn't apply myself. I had played sports as a kid. I was going to play football in high school. I think it was my sophomore year or summer of sophomore into junior year. Um, yeah, I got a cyst in my knee bone, and that kind of delayed me or sidelined me from playing any sports. It was hard to walk. Doctor came in and, it was like, you've got close to a golf ball sized cyst in your knee. And so, basically any sort of contact was out of the question. And, I asked her, I said, well, what about sports and all that? And she's like, I don't even want you walking fast, let alone, competing in any sort of sport. So I went towards more the music route in high school. I still love sports, man. I grew up with football. I played football. I was starting basketball in middle school. Um, T-ball as a kid, soccer, all of that. And so like I love sports. It was always a part of my life and not necessarily my identity, but I really enjoyed, especially basketball. I mean, I played as a kid in Hawaii, but, so anyway, so getting through high school, like college for me was just not, it wasn't a thing. I didn't want to be in school anymore. In my senior year, I took a dual credit English class, which gave me 6 credits of college freshman English, essentially. So I had 6 credits already. So I went to Incarnate Word right out of high school back in 2003, but I went for music. So I did a year of music business. Then I left there. I went to community college. So in San Antonio, they have a group of community colleges. And with the Alamo being in San Antonio, so they're all in San Antonio. It's the Alamo College Community District, and so there's 5 or 6 community colleges around the city. So based on where you live, you can just go to one that's close, or go to one that has your specific program. So I went to St. Philip's College for automotive. I did a year of like automotive business, tech, whatever. Um, Took a semester off, then I went back for entrepreneurial business, and 6 weeks in, I just decided to stop going. And about, man, 10 or 12 years later is when I went back to school. um, I'm a big Notre Dame fan, and so a buddy of mine was a trainer, athletic trainer with Notre Dame baseball, was able to go out there and see a game in 2011. And that kind of really flipped my mindset about, you need to go to school to get a degree to then like get in the industry. It's unless you just like your neighbor was the GM of like the Browns or something, you know what I mean? And like, oh, you're his kid, and then like you get hooked up mowing the grass, and then like you just work your way up through organization. Like that happens. It was like for me it was I didn't have an in anywhere. And so I saw athletic trainers, sports medicine, um you name it, like everyone's degree, right, in their office is on the wall. And I just kind of had a moment where it's like, man, you should probably go back to school, and like I want to kind of work in this environment. It was fun, seeing behind the scenes athletic trainers. You've got different, like being a fan, I'm there, and then like, like Golden Tate or something walks in, right? Or like quarterback. I'm like, holy crap, that's so and so. And it was just really cool to like, they're just normal, right? This all the TV and the big time, like all that stripped away, and you get behind the scenes, and it's like they're just normal kids. And so I had already gone to Incarnate Word, so I was basically readmitted already. But then, like you said, it's like community college, man. I can save some money. And so I went back to school. I did 2 years at a community college, knew what courses would transfer into Incarnate Word, was able to get on the Pell Grant. So that paid for my tuition, gave me extra money on the back end, paid for books, gas, food, all of that. I mean, I lived on my own. I was bartending full time, had another part-time job. I was just grinding it out, and so commuting to college, going in class, none of this online. You know what I mean? It probably was available back. I'm not like it's like super old, right? But 2012, yeah, probably 2012. But it wasn't as prevalent as it was today. So like for me, the only option was like you got to go to class, and so it was getting up every day, 6 in the morning, and getting to class, and then have the evenings and afternoons. So did 2 years at SAC, and then transferred into Incarnate Word and did 2014, 2015 there to complete my bachelor's degree. But looked up it. Incarnate Word had sports management. I lived in San Antonio, and so that was kind of really the decision for me to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to be a sports agent. I want to do this. I don't know. I wanted to work in sports. I wanted to make money, and I wanted to travel. And that was kind of my guide of like, okay, well, let's just get the degree, and then we'll see what happens after that. So
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible to look back, right? Like working those long hours, bartending and then going to college. Like I think you and I had a kind of similar kind of idea where we didn't really want to go back to school, but we knew we had to. It's just, when was the time right? And like you said too, going into class is obviously much different than just doing it virtually. I know when I was in college, we had the pandemic happen, so we had to do some virtual classes, and you don't get
yeah,
as much out of it, frankly, in my mind, over virtual classes, because obviously a lot of people can fabricate it and fake stuff and say, oh, I did this, I did that. And then, when they're in the industry, they could, fail and stuff. But you also brought up a good point too, is like just the grind that you were doing. And, it took you some time to figure it out. And I think community college is a perfect way to go because, like you said, the first 2 years of college, at least how I look at it, is basically you're spending free money to take
yeah,
over the classes you already took in high school, right? I still don't
yeah,
understand why they do that.
yeah,
Um, and that's, my personal thing. I think it's kind of ridiculous that you can just, go back to basic high school for 2 more years. Obviously not able to drink quite yet, but, just like that overlance kind of that. But, moving forward, like you were playing sports and everything and a lot, as well. And obviously it was tough to see that you couldn't essentially play sports once you had the injury. But what was like something that set you apart from like others? Like when you went to, Notre Dame and saw your buddy working there, like, was there like a switch that kind of turned on where it's like, all right, like I can do this, professionally and I want to work in sports right away?
Yeah, I mean, I think what set me apart, it was like, I know I mentioned this to you on the phone call we had a couple weeks ago as well, but for me at that time, I was bartending, I was having a good time, I wasn't having a bad life, I had a roof over my head, I paid for my apartment, but there was no progression. Like there was no savings, there was no thinking long term, and it was just a bit like a snowball, right? It just was growing and growing and growing. And then it just happened to be in 2011 when I got the chance to go, really, and the buddy of mine who was an athletic trainer, he was my dad's uncle, no, my dad's brother. So my uncle, his best friend's son. So they grew up in the same town, right? So we knew each other. I knew them. Well, I'd go back to visit. I knew this family growing up, right? So it wasn't like a stranger, but then in San Antonio every year, and I think it still goes on at Notre Dame does a baseball tournament called the Irish Spring Classic in February before their season. And so, and I'd gone to this before without knowing my buddy. His name's Scott Stansbury. Now is the minor league medical coordinator for the Orioles. So like he's progressed great in his career and incredible resource to have and all that. But, you know, my uncle was like, hey, my nephew lives down in San Antonio. Scott, you should connect with him. And so Scotty's like thinking I'm, like 12 or 13, 14, like nephew, not being like almost 28 years old. Right. So I show up and he's like, oh, you're like a grown dude. And I was like, yeah, man. And he's like, I was not expecting that. But so him and I hit it off right away. And, this is probably, maybe 2009, 2010. So a couple years going, and he's like, man, we got to get you to a game. We got to get you to a game. And so it was for whatever reason, 2011, that I got to go. And I think for me, there's a lot of things, like being a believer, being a Christian. I think the way kind of your life is shaped, and that this was, let's see, August. I went up to Maryland to get a Jeep from my grandfather who got a new Jeep. He had a Jeep that he had brand new since 95. My dad and I went up there, got it, drove back. September, I went to Notre Dame for the first time. That was 2011. And then in October, my grandfather passed away suddenly from a stroke. And so like, had I not gone to get the Jeep, had I not September, they kind of helped pay for a ticket for me because that was around my birthday. I had called him, and that conversation I had talking to my grandfather was the last conversation I had with him when he was alive. And so when you look at these things, or like you sometimes don't know why things are happening, but you just know, like, I don't know, for me, I'm very intuitive and I'm very kind of in tune with what's going on. And it's something's something's different. It's just was, I don't know. And so where I was at in my life, I'm at on the campus of Notre Dame where I'm like, this is amazing. And I just had this thought where it's like, you need to get it together, and I was overweight, I was out of shape, I smoked cigarettes, like a chimney, like I was in the bartending scene, man. It was fast times, late night, rock and roll, music. And I just kind of, when I went back, was like, I need to get back into school. And it was always for me, it was like, I want to get my degree. I wasn't like, I need to go to this school. I obviously wanted to go to Notre Dame. I wanted to get a big college experience, but I knew it's like the most important thing is the fact that you can have that degree. That's the most important thing, no matter where you get it, right? So, came back and then looked into Incarnate Word because like, well, let me start there. But I was looking at other schools around that had sports management, maybe, thinking about leaving. And Then I got the Pell Grant, and then the community college. It all just kind of made sense, and was able to stay at home. And so yeah, man, it was just like you got to go to school, right? Like I don't know what I want to do. It wasn't like I wanted to be a doctor. Sorry about that. Amber alert going off.
Hey, that's all right.
So, hold on one sec. Let me go shut off my work phone. But yeah, so I just, was like I needed to do something. My life was like again, not that I was in a bad place. I wasn't like down and out. It was just like I got to change. Something's got to give and I just figured I'd work in sports. And then yeah, got admitted to Incarnate Word, but then of course applied at SAC, was able to get in there, did 2 years there. And that's kind of really what got me into what sports could be, where I was coaching basketball there at SAC, had no experience whatsoever doing that, but just by the relationships, being in a coaching class, one of the electives that I took, met the head basketball coach, got hooked up there, but then was doing strength and conditioning work. I myself was doing a lot of personal work and like quit smoking cigarettes cold turkey. I'm now 13 years, no patch, no gum, no nothing, just stop, and getting myself back in shape. But then did that. But then the next year, going in Incarnate Word, I wound up playing basketball, and then I played against the same kids that I was coaching. But I think it's just you. I was in this point where I'm going to start trying to do the things that I've always dreamt about wanting to do. If I get to them, great. If I don't, great. But like, you just got to pursue it. And I think it's like you get past, like so many people want to skip over your mess and get right to like your message of like, oh, I've been through all this crap. Yeah, that's fine. But like, oh, you're a director now, but that's not that doesn't matter, right? It's like you can't skip over all of these late nights and early mornings and no one's just here you go. Here's everything you want after you graduate. Like you got to put in the time. And like when I went to SAC, I tried to get into college algebra and I couldn't because my grade was so low. So I wound up having to do 3 remedial courses, and one of the math teachers was my professor from high school who I recognized. But then that led me and set me up for success. So when I got in college algebra and Incarnate Word at a 4-year university, I got 101.5 as my overall grade. And like I was so confident in like what I was supposed to do. And so but yeah, and then that's kind of like it was just I needed to switch. I needed to change where I was going, what I was doing. And for me, education and sports were those two things that I knew I could get done. And then yeah, just started going, started you get in a plan, knock them out and continue on.
When you go through like the path and for you like I think that story that you talked about how he's like thinking that you're like 13 or 14 and you're like double that I'm 28.
Yeah.
I think that's hilarious. Like that's why we have these podcasts and stuff, because like stories like that we would never have heard, and like now people can kind of hear of like, look, it doesn't matter what your age is as long as you got that passion and that drive, and like you said too, like I'm gonna do it and making changes. Like congratulations on being 13 years without having patch or any smoking or anything. Like that's pretty remarkable, man. That's determination first of all, because I know smoking in general is hard to quit, right? Like
Yep.
everything's every bad thing that I feel like we do is hard to quit, right?
Yep.
Everything that's good we don't tend to do, and so that's why it's takes a little bit harder to kind of keep the path there. But you said too, like working those long nights and understanding the process and the purpose, and having your religion there too as well, pushing you there is incredible. But my biggest question here is like, so what kind of came down to like wanting to go more in like the equipment manager side? I know we're going to be talking about your experiences here, but when you think about equipment, right, like you don't, at least myself, doesn't really know too much behind it, but was that always something that you were like kind of passionate about, at least to try and get in this sports field?
Yeah, honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought for me it was like somewhere on the business side, sports agent. I wanted like, the flashy suits and like the guys that you see, and it's like, well, I could do that, but I don't like, well, how do you even start? And so it goes back down to it's like, well, you need a degree, right? Like you need to go some sort of schooling, some sort of something. And so, the 2 years at SAC, I was doing the, coaching, all that. My mindset and my thought process was, I wanted to walk on and play football or basketball or something. I hadn't used up any years of eligibility. Like I wasn't like completely out of shape, but I was definitely not in Division 1 FCS level like college shape, So club sports basketball it was, and I was like, all right, well, this is cool, maybe I'll get into like coaching or, I knew like athletic training and sports medicine, that wasn't really up my alley. But honestly, I just kind of fell into the equipment management. I mean, when I was at Incarnate Word, it was the first semester I was there, so probably spring of like 2014, late February, early March. One of the GAs from football came in and quick presentation. Hey, we're starting spring ball soon. We need help with football or video. We're coming around to all the sport management classes, trying to get volunteers. If anybody would like to help, here's my info, kind of thing. And so I thought right away, it's like, well, there's a great in, but prior to this, I had already gone down to the head coach's office. Like I'd already shook his hand, I already met him, said, hey, my name's Josh Shoemaker. I'm just starting up. I'm a junior, 20, I don't know, 9 years old, whatever it was. That was 2014. I was probably 29. So I would have been 30 that fall. But, I was like, hey, I want to walk on and play football. And I just wanted to come introduce myself, find out when spring tryouts were and all this. And I think I had missed them already. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll just wait for the next year, but like figure out how to be involved with the team, whatever. And so, then several weeks later, it's like, oh, here's this opportunity to go work football. Now, if I had the opportunity to go back and do it again, I would have gone more the video route or had tried to do both. Because I think the way that athletics and sports and like media is going now, like having that video, whether you're filming practice or you're cut like that knowledge, because now, I mean, you want to be an offensive defensive analyst, you want to be quality control, you're in a GA and like whatever, like knowing how to cut up film, break down game film, all of that is so important. And I think having that knowledge as well, if I could go back and do it over again, have that question, I think I might have gone to this route. But for me, I was like, man, football equipment, like I know what shoulder pads are, I know what helmets are. Like in my mind, it just like, this is the perfect fit. And obviously, football, right? Like it's the biggest sport. And so I immediately called him after, went down to the equipment room that day and then wound up the next day with a hat, a polo, shorts and shoes, and at that time, Ricky Williams, was the running backs coach, assistant running backs coach there, playing in Austin. He was from that area and from San Antonio. And so like I walked in the first day and his Heisman trophy is just sitting there on the table. And I was like, well, that's pretty rad, So like my boss now is like one of a really good friends of mine, now 10 plus years, but he was like, look, man, like I can't pay you. I can't give you school credit. I mean, he was just finishing up his master's degree as well. And so like he was just coming off being a GA and then was going to get promoted full time. But he's like, yeah, I can't pay you. I can't give you school credit. Don't know if you're going to be able to travel. I just need help. And I was like, look, like I'm two hands. I'm here. I'm here. And at that time I was living on campus. So I decided to move out of my apartment, live on campus, get the whole experience, right? I was bartending. Like I would spend less than in loans and like rather than having to work full time and spend on my apartment. I was like, I'd rather just be like get the college experience while I can with one last try, right? And so, but yeah, like then just started showing up, man, and like knowing I'm not getting paid, but I'm already there. And it's like, if you've got all this free time, and I was a good student, like I studied, I made good use of my time. I didn't screw around. There were nights, Friday nights, man, come out, man. Like I'm bartending, whatever. I'm at this bar. I'm over here. I was like, dude, I got homework to do. Like, and there were several weekends where all I did was, you know, homework till 10 or 11 at night, turn the lights off, get up at 6 or 7 in the morning, go work out, come back. But I was on campus. I'd go walk around to the library, or I'd go just out and about. And, um, yeah, it was great. So like, I just like, okay, well, football equipment is what we're going to do. Right. And so I did that for 2 years until I graduated, and then was still working, was still bartending, was making money. I was like, well, I'm not in a bad spot, so I'll just continue to work. But getting into like my fourth season with football, it was like, look, like I need to get paid, and they knew that. I was like, look, I'm still willing to be here. I'm still living in San Antonio, but it's like I got to start applying for jobs elsewhere that like I can get like an actual salary. And so that's kind of where that landed. But then, but yeah, that progressed into doing almost 4 seasons of football, but traveled with the team. Coaches knew me. I was setting up practice, tearing down practice, packing the truck. But I mean, we're doing, towels, the loops, the jerseys, the uniforms, packing, unpacking, loading the stadium. And it was just myself and my boss. There was no GAs, no students, no helpers, no volunteers, a couple interns here and there, but like for 4 years, man, just grinding, and experience will pay off. And I think the message to like, if whoever's listening, or how do I get in? And I just happened to be at a school that had football, that was a smaller, newer program. But the fact, like, you don't need to be sitting in a class to wait for a graduate assistant to come down and tell you, hey, we need help in A, B, C, D, E area, right? Like, if you're wanting to work in sports, the second you're on campus, you get down to the athletics department and you're talking to everybody. Hey, I'm a sport management student, or I'm this, I want to work in sports. I don't know what I want to do, but how can I help? Okay, well, if athletics is needed, then there's ticketing, there's marketing, there's social media, there's sports information, there's equipment, there's operations, there's, coaching. Like, you know what I mean? That's 7, 8, 9 different areas, like right away. But it's like, it's not what degree you get, or like the degree that you get, but like, what are you doing while you're getting it? And for me, it was like, well, I'm just going to sit back. I got a degree in sport management, and you get done and like, all right, well, what did you do? Oh, I got a degree. Great. Well, what else did you do? And so for me, it was like, oh, I'm not getting paid. Blah, blah, blah. I could have very easily just, like, dude, I'm not going to be out here pushing in dirty towels and laundry and loops, you know what I mean, for no pay. But, it led to where I'm at today. So I think for me, it's the important thing is that like, not everything's just going to be handed to you, but you got to be willing, to work 2, 3 jobs and volunteer and go to school, and it can be done. It's not hard. It's difficult, but it's not hard.
You talked about the fact that you were able to get a lot of experience, and for you too is like don't wait till last day of school, and don't be a person like I just got a degree, like give me a job, right? That never works in sports, and now more industries than ever, like it's not really working as well. You need to get that experience, and it's huge for you as well. And I think it's funny you said that, 4 years, like, hey, I need to get paid at least, something like, heck, like
Yeah.
throw me something, maybe a t-shirt, like a little NIL deal now, right? Like something. And it's important for people to hear that. I know when I was in college, I wanted to, be similar like you, where I was going out, and instead of going out on the weekends, I was actually going out and network on the weekends and scheduling stuff and
Yeah.
making sure I put myself in, a better, position than other people. And unfortunately, I had a lot of, classmates, and I'm sure you did as well, that like they got the degree and then they couldn't do anything with it because they didn't have any experience, right?
Right. Or a lot of them are not working in sports now, right?
Exactly.
Or maybe they didn't want to work in sport. It's just, oh, it's a sports management. And let's be honest, it was not a hard degree. I see my buddy just graduated from Wisconsin. this past weekend with a BBA, and some of the stuff he's talking about, like granted he's marketing, but like I was like, bro, I wasn't doing half what you were doing in my BBA class. I have a bachelor's of business administration and sports management, right? So like, but I think a thing too is, I was, as you were just talking, it's like, okay, you're in school, you're doing all this stuff, right? I want to party, I want to meet girls, I want to do this. Cool. It's college, all good, right? But, also too, if you're coming in, I had no connections, zero network, I didn't know anybody in sports. It was just this drive that was like, but like, it was life or death. For me, it was like, I have to make this work. And, I was 28, 29 years old, almost 30. So like my mindset was different, but someone that's in school right now, that listens to this episode and is like, man, I don't know, but like, trust me, people will hire free labor, but it's most of the time that the person doesn't, well, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna take advantage of this. But like, you put what you did for free down on paper, that will pay you on the other end. It's like you're gonna get paid for that. You just don't know it, right? And that's so easy to say when you're sitting in a ticketing or you're doing some stupid marketing and you're printing stuff off or whatever. But like you're also learning interpersonal skills. You're also learning business. You're also learning office skills. You're also learning troubleshooting, time management. Like I'm self-taught in what I do now. Like I had no director of operations experience, but I was in the right place at the right time. But I was quick. I always like, you believe in yourself, the belief that like I can do this. Just because I don't know anybody or just because I don't have, a connection into sports. And so people get so delayed or I see this on LinkedIn too a lot is that they lock themselves in geographically. It's like, you need to be able to go anywhere. Well, I'm only looking for Dallas, Fort Worth area or something like that. It's like, well, there's such a finite amount, but like your job in future could be 2 states away. But because you're willing, now if it's family, medical, things like that, understand. But, um, for me, it was just like the right place, the right time. But if football equipment didn't work out, I was going to go talk to video. I was going to go talk to marketing, to ticketing, to the head equipment guy and be like, hey, like, what can I do? How can I help? Like, where do you need help with? What can I do? And you don't know, coaches, what people are talking about you. But if you're putting yourself in forth in good work, people are going to remember that. And it's paid off for me. So
People remember, hard work as well as just dedication. Like you said, 4 years too. And for me, when it comes to equipment, like I know there's crazy stories, crazy things happen and stuff. What's like the craziest thing that happened? Maybe like something that wasn't planned where you're like, oh, I forgot someone's jersey. I know that's obviously worst case scenario, but like, was there anything kind of like funny? That, when you were obviously first couple of years trying to figure out, like you forgot something or you're like, shoot, like, how is this going to even work for this player because we didn't bring their spare socks or whatever the case is.
yeah, we in fact one that always sticks out to me, and I tell the story quite often is we as equipment, right? So O line, D line, you've got knee braces, and so we have a big bag. So before we would leave, we'd put the bag in the middle of the locker room, and all the guys, wrap them, tape them, their number, and then they're put in the bag, and so. Nowadays, you got a travel bag. Most people are just going to carry them in their own bag, right? But every team's different. Every school's different. So we were in San Antonio. We were playing a game up in Abilene, which is probably a good, I don't know, 5.5, 6 hours away or so, give or take. And so my boss and I were on the box truck and we're taking everything, and him and I worked really well. He was prior military. I come from a military family, and so him and I hit it off pretty well, but we would always kind of go over like, okay, I did this, I packed this. You kind of go head to toe, right? Like you get all the stuff you need for your helmets. Okay, I got all that, shoulder pads, extra jerseys, extra whatever it is that you need. And so we're kind of going down the list and I was like, oh, like knee braces. And it kind of got silent. And he's like, I left the knee brace bag in the middle of the locker room, and we're almost to Abilene. And so we're like, well, that's not good. So we're gonna have to turn around and go back and get it and then drive back. And so one of the coaches was a former NFL guy, and he never drove on the bus. He always would fly. And so he was flying into the smaller airport up there. And so we had called him and asked, that, hey, is there any way if you haven't left campus yet, can you go by the locker room, pick this up? And so he was this tall, very large, black coach, and my boss was very small, short, white, bald head guy. And I mean, next to each other, the odd couple, man. It was hilarious. And so we drive up to the side entrance of the Abilene Regional Airport in the box truck at like 8:30 in the morning. He goes in and gets them. They're coming back, and it is just him with a backpack and then a roller tray and this giant red bag of like knee braces. And so they get in and like, Coach Moore, what's up? He's like, hey fellas, happy game day or whatever. And so like then we go off to the game and we set everything up, but it was just like, you're never going to forget the knee braces now. But never really had like a crazy instance where like we forgot helmets or, we forgot cleats. Like him and I were pretty detailed, but that was one that always sticks out to me where it's like, dude, we're going to have to drive all the way back. But Coach Moore at the 11th hour saved the day. So
Coach Moore is the real one, and it's funny, like you kind of said throughout the podcast, like just because your job description says equipment, like Coach Moore, he's coming in clutch at a good time because you guys would have had to drive back, and obviously 5.5 hours stuck in a box truck's probably not like the most ideal, and then going
no.
there and back, so like that would have been a pretty crazy day. So it's cool that you were able to make those connections. And you were talking about that as well. Like for you, making connections, like what does that mean to you? And how were you able to make connections throughout your obviously college career to get you onto that next level?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like, I get it from my dad. My dad's a salesman, and I just think growing up, the way that he talked to people, life is about relationships and people and networking and who you know. And um, I just like I wasn't wanting to just go in cold call to the head coach's office and meet him, but I know like there's things that sometimes you just got to get out of your comfort zone and go do it because it's what you need to do. And for me, I was, uh, I would go talk to the coaches. I would go ask them what they needed, like get to know people. And it wasn't just like, what can I get? Gimme, gimme, gimme. Like, what can I get out of this? Like, for me, I'm a servant. Like, how can I serve and give back? Right? Like, I had no skin in the game to incarnate word other than that's where I was getting my degree. It wasn't like grew up loving incarnate word football for 50 years, a family. You know what I mean? When I went to school there, they'd only been around for probably 5 years, right? And so, for me, it was just like, what value can you bring? And for me, the more that I was around it, the more, I would see the football guys out on campus. I felt myself becoming more of myself. I was getting more. I mean, I was a bartender, so I was always out of my shell, if you will. But like, I just felt more confident getting into things, and I felt involved and a part of something. And when the team did good, it was a good feeling. But one of the boosters for football was a professor. He was a business stats professor, and I happened to take business stats with him, and he graded very fairly, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a time where, maybe I got a half point because he knew that I was also volunteering football and then doing my homework on the plane and, when we're traveling and all that. So I think, it's just even like, and I think people have this networking like, oh, I got to text them all the time. And I was like, no, like you got the contact in the phone. That's there, and like I do this still, and I really, if someone pops in my head and I've got your info, I'm going to shoot you a message, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, a text, a phone call, whatever. But hey, man, just checking in. How's it going? Or hey, remember when we were, Or, hey, I was looking to see, I've got a friend of mine, um, you just talking about network, a former student of mine when I was at East Stroudsburg, she's just graduating. When I left there, she basically took over football equipment. And so it was the same kind of situation where she just right place, the right time, saw an opportunity, but wants to be in equipment management. When she came down to work for me, she had zero equipment management experience. But then by the end of it, she was the top person that I had. I could trust her. Like if I left anywhere, I was like, she knows what she's doing. But inventory, like how to get helmets together, how to put them apart, laundry, like scheduling, just that awareness, self awareness of like what can I do, how can I help and add value. But there was a internship position at University of Alabama, Birmingham. I know the director of equipment there through networking relationships that I've known from Incarnate Word. Him and I have never met in person, but I've had conversations. But he had an internship posted, so I had her apply. Don't know if she's going to get it, but it's like, hey, Eddie, you know, former student of mine, Diela's applying. Can you take a look? And it's just so important, right? Just hold yourself up with like where you understand where you're at. It's important to be yourself, yes, but it's important also to understand like sometimes you got to play the game sometimes, and you got to sometimes just play the part, look the role, yes sir, no sir, and you just gotta figure it out, and it's not easy to always like talk to people, but for me, I just enjoy um, making a time and making the attempt to understand other people, and because you never know what you're going to need. And that just not just in athletics, right? For me in operations, it's bus drivers, it's people at the airport, it's hotel managers, sales managers, catering managers, food vendors, suppliers, like you name it, right? And relationship and talking to people and like I could be having the worst day ever, but I'm not going to be short with somebody because like that's not their fault, you know? And so like I think kind of having that emotional and intelligence and emotional like maturity to like put some of those things aside. And if you're having a bad day or your coworker this, like athletics is high stress, high pace, fast pace. Like it is not for the timid or weak. I think people get into it like, well, it's thankless. There's no money. I mean, like you're not going to get rich, right? Unless AD or president level, whatever, but that takes years and years and years and years and years, but, cold calling, emailing, like you never know who's going to read that. And so if you apply, like, are you emailing the coaches? Like, are you calling the hiring people and saying like, hey, is this still available? Like, all of those things, are important. And I think is a lost art where it's like, okay, I went to school, I got the degree, got the internship. Where's my job?
No, nothing. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
nothing.
Like it doesn't
It's
quite work that way.
if
So
if it did, that would be incredible because I feel like I would
everybody will be working in sports and there would be no
exactly.
jobs available. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
job security wouldn't be really a too bad of a thing though. Then we think about it because there'd be just so many people who have jobs already. But you brought into like for us why we do this podcast, right? Like we're trying to give back. We also love hearing about people's journeys, such as yourself, of like where you got to and your experience as well as stuff that I'm listening right now is getting me fired up in general. Um, and so it's just interesting to see, it obviously unfold and everything. You were able to get more experience on like the UFC side. I'm not too familiar with the Ultimate Fighting Championship essentially, but can you talk about us with that experience, how you got that and like how that experience really helped you as well? Cause like UFC is huge, man. So I'm
yeah.
just not as inclined or as aware of like the excitement around it.
Yeah. So you know, wasn't a huge fan, but grew up watching it as a kid. Neighbor across the street, his dad would watch them. So I watched a lot of the earlier ones and kind of fell off with it. Never was like a huge fan, but always kind of knew, what was going on with it. And so when I applied, it was in the fall, September of 2017, and I was coming up on my fourth year with Incarnate Word. And I was like, look, I need to get paid. I need something out of this. I'm willing to stay, but I just like I need. And they were throwing back, oh, but might be able to open up a GA position for you. And I was like, man, I don't really want to go back to school anymore. I just put 4 years in. Like December 2015, I was like, I'm done with school. And so, um, that was still tossed around, but they're like, we might be able to do something hourly, but we don't know. The head equipment manager over all of athletics, who's kind of more administrative, was responsible for a lot of the apparel and contracts. He paid me $200 per road trip out of his own pocket just to keep me around. And that was either the third or the fourth season that I was there. But basically, my dad kind of was a little bit of a catalyst for this, but he was like, when are you gonna get a real job? Like when are you gonna get a job in sports? Like, well, we're football, and he's like, you do football, but you're not working like career, and he wasn't trying to be rude but it was like a little bit of tough love. But he's like, you need to get going. And so I said, yeah, you're right. So I started just applying everywhere, that I could, equipment jobs, operations, like event management, whatever I could that was sports related, right? And just, was applying everywhere. And then was actually a Saturday night, was at my buddy's place watching the Notre Dame game. So I pulled out my laptop and went on to Teamwork online. I hadn't used it in so long that I forgot my password. So I was like, I had to reset my login info. And so, but yeah, I just typed in equipment manager, and the first one to pop up was the UFC. And, apparel and equipment. And it's like, it's a lot different from football, but like what their like experience that they were looking for was 2 to 4 years of college football equipment experience, which is exactly what I had. They don't need to know that I wasn't getting paid. They don't need to know all of those things. But what they do need to know is that I could put 4 years of experience and talk about it with a lot of tangible, like knowledge and I'm good in an interview. Just give me a chance. Right. And so I applied, and then, a week later or so, I get a call, and they set up a phone interview, did the phone interview. It went great. They called me an hour later and said, our hiring department wants to talk to you right away. And can we set up a Skype interview? So they set up a Skype interview, wound up being on my birthday that year, and had the Skype interview. And then, 4 or 5 days later, I get a call. They wanted to fly me out in person. So I flew out, had the interview there. And I remember the interview, my boss asked me, he's like, so, I remember talking about football experience, but like just shed some light on what exactly that was. And it was like, well, my boss and I basically, and my boss there at the UFC, he had did 30 years in the NFL. So like well versed in football equipment management and how it works and how much people and the grind and all that. So for him to know that I volunteered for 4 years, B, it was just my boss and I with no students, no help, no nothing. We did everything. And I just think he was like, wow, like this guy's willing to do for free. Like, what are you willing to do then, like when you're actually going to get paid a salary, right? So I think then coupled with my personality and just what I was, where I was at in life, that like, again, if I didn't get the job, it would have been fine. I would have been back to working football, and we'll figure it out, but it was meant to be. And so then a couple of days later, I'm driving to work at the bar, and it was actually on the day 6 years later that my grandfather passed away, that we got the call that I got offered the job for the UFC. And so, accepted the offer and moved out to Vegas, and then started that. But it was because it was the right place, the right time, but I got that job based solely off the experience that I did in football equipment. Had I not done those 4 years or any years, probably wouldn't have the job at the UFC. Obviously you've got to sell yourself, right? Like you've got to bring the best thing to the interview, but it was for me, it was just like I got that job based solely on the fact that I sacrificed 4 years of my life to learn a skill, and I could then translate that into the UFC, and then was there for 3 years. So, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that experience, I feel like in general, just crazy, right? Turn of events of knowing kind of where you were, as well as where you wanted to get to, and then like you said, you got to make a salary at some point, right? Like you have athletes who like they
Yeah.
obviously get paid, but like in a
Yeah.
way, their first couple of years are kind of the least of the worries. Obviously, making 800,000 or more, I'd probably take honestly if I was an
Yeah.
athlete of any caliber. Like I think I
Yeah.
could live with even 100,000 if you wanted to pay me on that. But that experience you said too is like you had to have done the 4 years, and yeah, you didn't get paid. You was a smaller team, and I'm sure obviously long nights and stuff as working as a bartender as well. But just the fact that you're able to get that experience, and obviously that helps you in the next level, right? Moving forward to the next position of being director of equipment operations for East. Is it Stroudsburg
Yeah.
University? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I didn't fully butcher it.
No, it's good. Yeah.
But did that kind of come into fact after that, where they're like, all right, there's a position open. I've done so many years now. I'm getting paid. This is an opportunity for me to push your career forward. Because like you said, when you're in sports, you got to move. You can't just stay in one spot. And
Yeah.
when you're younger, obviously, much easier. When you're older, it gets a little bit more difficult. Obviously, you're you know defining the odds essentially because you're able to do it. But talk about us with that experience and how that really helped you as well to get to the next level for you.
Yeah, the UFC was great. It was an awesome opportunity. Got to travel the world. And really it was the best mix of everything that I had nothing to base it off of, bartending. I worked at Sonic and other odd jobs here and there growing up. But like for me, it was the best mix of everything where I got to drive a forklift. You're in a 60,000 square foot warehouse, and using heat press, you're printing vinyl. So your creative side, it's the hands-on, you're packing boxes, you're loading pallets, getting stuff ready. Then you're traveling, you're on the road, setting up arenas, different countries, different cities. It was always fast, always. And I was like, man, I love this. Like for me, now the environment that I was in and the culture that I was in was very toxic, and the department that I was in was the worst I've ever been a part of. But the job side of it was awesome. And so yeah, I just and then in August of 2020 I was let go. Wasn't necessarily directly related to the pandemic, or some other things that went on, but it I was found like without a job, and like my whole identity was wrapped up in that job, and I think there's a good opportunity to just say like your identity can't come from the status and I work football and I'm in equipment and I did I'm wearing all the gear and the swag. It's like, dude, like that can be taken away from you in an absolute instant, and you will fall flat on your face. So if you don't have some sort of identity and who you're grounded in and the why you do what you do, it's a very tough place out there. But so I was on unemployment. I was out in Nevada. It's like, I can move home to Texas and collect unemployment. So I moved back home, and then, for 7 months or so, man, it was wake up, apply. And I applied to probably over 200 different places. And this is like physical applications, cold calls, text, emails, you name it, right? Sliding in people's DMs, like anything that I could find. I mean, I started at A and went down to Z. And if I remotely knew you in any way, shape, or form, and you were in sports, I'm calling you or texting you or emailing. And so I wound up getting an interview with Austin FC up in it was at that time the expansion Major League Soccer team for equipment. And then I was in the second round with them, and then East Stroudsburg had called for an interview. So I was interviewing with both. Wound up not getting the Austin FC job. Didn't know that until I'd already got an offer with East Stroudsburg. So I was like, well, I got an offer here. And I'm not sure over here, but I want to take Austin FC because I was like, oh, I want to be in professional sport. But they wound up going with somebody that had Major League Soccer equipment experience already, which totally understand. So, I'm here like had just come from the UFC, like pinnacle of like pro sports. It was really a great marriage of like everything that I loved about work, about travel, equipment, the job, like Vegas. I loved it, everything about it. And so I was like, well, unemployment was running out. I was like, I need to get back to work, and I can't just continue to do this. So for me, it was more of just this is kind of a step back for me, right? Like going from professional sport to D2 in some small little town in East Pennsylvania, but um, was told, could get my master's degree. I was part of a union. It was on the East Coast, and so I was like, all right, well, that's actually pretty good. Got there, found out none of that was true. So had a decision to make. I was like, you know what? I made a commitment to come out here. Let me just start this, get them through spring ball for football. So I was a director of equipment for all of athletics. So I had, 20 something sports that I was in charge of. So all of their laundry, distribution, shipping, receiving, outfitting, apparel, like you name it, I was in charge. So I had a GA and some student workers and a couple volunteers. And so we just went to work making it happen and wound up actually being one of the best places that I've worked. Had some breakthroughs personally, and getting back to church and doing some things, and so but it's like all of that I learned from UFC and everything that I took. It's like when you're presented with this, it's like I didn't know that I could be in charge of an entire athletics department until you get there, and you're like, oh wow, actually I can. And so you just kind of start taking from different things that you learned and different things that you picked up on. And I think being inquisitive, being just learn, like, what can I do? Like sponge, just soaking everything in that I could. I was prepared for that moment. And so, did that for, it was probably what, February to November of 21. So,
And the rest is history. And you brought up a good point, right? Like a lot of positions that we take, like yeah, one, they can say something, and when you come in, and there can be a total different, outcome. And you took the high road of like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I committed. I'm not going to back away just because of whatever the case was. And I think having that mindset's huge. Like, yeah, you don't want to be there if it's like toxic and it's like pushing you out and everything. But if you're able to get that experience and, maybe change the organization, right? A lot of people are able to leave a, good impact. And unfortunately, the master program didn't, work out and everything, but you got that experience, and then it led you to the position that you're in now. And, I think something you brought up earlier was like, just knowing where you kind of wanted to be, where your place was. And, sometimes it takes a couple jobs to figure out where you want to be. And, now that you're in California, like obviously having that experience under your belt, like working in lacrosse, did you ever see yourself specifically working in lacrosse, or was it same what you were saying earlier, like whatever sport I can obviously help, that's my goal, and if I can, excel in that, that's my goal as well.
yeah, I mean, I think I came from, working football first, going to MMA, and then, or professional sport, and then, getting back to like Division II, right? Or for me, as a director of equipment, I got to see all different kinds of sports, but everybody wants to be around the big three, right? Football, baseball, basketball. And so for me, it was like, well, I got a good mix. And I was the head football equipment manager. So anything football related, I was out there. Every practice, every game, travel, home, away, fall, in season, all of that. Like football is my thing. And so I just have like that tie there. But, when when I was getting the job and doing the interviews for, SC, that got brought up. They said, hey, you're the director now of equipment. How would you feel stepping away from being in charge, right? But then coming back to an assistant director and taking more of like a ancillary role where it's like you're only working lacrosse and soccer and then golf. Like, let's just be real. Like, who wants to do that? For me, I was just like, there's an opportunity to grow and advance, and I wasn't going to get that at East Stroudsburg. And I knew that. And so I was also interviewing with Drake University as their head equipment manager. And so kind of the same level of what I would be doing at East Stroudsburg, but now, hey, you're in D1 again. You're back to FCS. You're still around football. And then this job with SC came open. It was probably early September. Um, and I asked them. I said, what's the timeline for hiring and all that? And they said we want to get somebody in right away. And it's like, well, our season's not over until November, and so I'm not willing to leave until our season's done, especially with football. And so, most people are like, man, like USC offers you that job, you better take it right away. It was like, that's not where I got to where I'm at. And I'm not going to change that now, where it's like, I made a commitment and I'm going to fulfill that commitment. And so, it wound up working out, and then I got the offer, but then within 10 months of being out here, but when I came out here for lacrosse, I was at every game. I was in the coaches' offices. Like, I was talking to them, made relationships with them, so they knew who I was. And I think through them knowing, like, we knew what we got with this guy with equipment. And then so, like, when our operations director position came open, I jumped on it right away. It's like, if I didn't get it, great. But it's like, I didn't want to be in equipment the rest of my career. I want to keep progressing, and when I left East Stroudsburg, is I want to come out here, I want to get in operations, and I want to win a championship. So within the first year of me, like, okay, got that. And so now we're on our third year, have conference realignment, new conference, have, mind you. So yeah, it was just like, okay, whatever sports needed. And then, now it's nice where I can just focus on one sport and I don't have four or five other things. It's just like, this is my sport. This is what we do. And I can focus solely on that. So it's been great.
Yeah, excelling in one sport at the college level, right? There's so many sports that you can essentially do, and like you said, like doing multiple is, I'm sure, tough, stressful, as well as different planning kind of operations on that side. But obviously, you've been able to excel with it. You're, seeing championships, which is really nice, and hopefully next year the big one as well. But before we wrap up here, we do have a Flash Friday kind of segment here. This is where we kind of ask some questions that can get a little bit easier for people to connect with you and everything. Obviously, you kind of talked about Notre Dame and everything. My question to you is, if you were to be the quarterback of Notre Dame, who would your wide receivers be? Your two wide receivers, one running back, and then who would be your coach and why?
Can they be like past players or?
Yeah. If they're dead and stuff, that's totally fine. I'd be interested just to hear, your perspective. You're the quarterback, so you obviously got to have a good running back, good wide receivers, and then a good coach to make sure you obviously win the big one.
That's interesting. I would just say probably Samardzija would be one, and then man, that's a great question. Put me on the spot. Probably like a Golden Tate. I'm just thinking recently, and I'm sure I'm skipping over way more talent than I should. And then so running back, you said, man, I probably would put our running back we had this season, Love, in there. And then coach, man, that's a great question. I would say somebody like a Tony Dungy, or like a Lou Holtz or somebody like that. Like, I would want a coach that does it the right way.
Yeah, that I would. So how I was like looking at it, like I would choose my dad, frankly, because he was always hard on me, so that he'd push me to be excellent and stuff. But
Nice.
obviously, he doesn't have the level of excellence there. We'd probably lose a lot of games if he was coach. So your answer is much better there. My follow up next question is, you're a bartender. What was your favorite drink to make and why?
Favorite drink to make was a whiskey Coke because it was easy. Whiskey and Coke, man. I was like, I want to bartend, but I don't know how to bartend. I'm like, dude, what's in a whiskey and Coke? And they're like, whiskey Coke. There you go. You already know how to make one. I'd always joke though, my favorite drink to make was just a straight shot of whiskey. You just pour it up and there you go. But no, I like to make, it wasn't like a cocktail bar, so it was more of a speed bar type club, but, use my my talents here and there and come up with concoctions. But my favorite drink was just kind of whatever was being made at that time. I never had like a signature cocktail or anything. So
You didn't have like a Josh cocktail or like a,
I could make a really good Bloody Mary. So like
oh, okay,
I
I'm up
always
for that.
always suck to make because you know there's a lot to it, but I can make a pretty good Bloody Mary or michelada. So.
Man, it sounds just good. Just like
In fact,
I'm
it's getting close to noon right now,
yeah,
so
I was gonna say anytime, I got you, man. And then my last question here is, and we kind of talked about this on our call. Where's one place you'd like to travel? Who do you like to take with? And why?
um I've been a lot of places and but I think for me right now the top of my list is going back to Hawaii. I lived there from 92 to 95 and so I haven't been back since and I think who I'd want to take is either my girlfriend now or we've talked about honeymoon out there, but probably my family, my mom, my sister, and my dad, and just so we could be back at that place together as a family again. It hasn't been for 30 years. So I think right now that's kind of like every year where I'm like, I got to get back to Hawaii. I got to get back to Hawaii. So right now that's my goal and trying to figure out how to make that happen. So
Hey, you'll make it happen. You're in the operations, baby. You got all that experience and stuff. They're for sure looking at you to make the plans in place and everything. I do have a follow up there. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a huge NIL kind of guy, so I'm curious, and I've asked this on every podcast I feel now. But what NIL deal would you do with any like organization, anything, and why?
I would do an NIL deal with Bang Energy. Um, you probably can't
There
see
we
it.
go. Okay.
So I usually start my day with one of those, and that's like most of the caffeine that I have. But if anybody knows anything about me, is that like I'm hopped up on caffeine most of the time, and Bang's like I start my day, and it's probably not good, but I think, man, I would take pictures of me and tag Bang in everything that I did, and that would be like a great deal to have for me. So
That'd be a wonderful partnership. And like you said, it probably Bang would for sure get a lot more money
no
when it
doubt.
comes to that, I'm sure. Um, we always ask those questions for our front office Fridays because, like you said, caught some of them off guard. Some of those you already knew. You're like, I already got it. I already have the product right next to me, which makes it easier. And then the thing bringing family together, I think sports brings people together in general. So let me know how that goes on the operation side. You got to make sure
Yeah.
it's like a week. It can't be just, 2 or 3 days. Why?
It's gonna be at least like 10 days for sure. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe,
At least 10 days. Yeah.
at least 10 days. There you go, dude. That sounds like a vibe. And make sure it's good, good time during the year and everything. You don't want any tsunamis or anything like that,
Mhm.
devastating or anything.
No doubt.
Awesome. Well, before we leave here on the podcast, Josh, is there any last kind of things that you'd recommend for students who are trying to get in the sports industry or even people who, maybe are in their, late 20s, late 30s, or heck, even late 40s, that are trying to get into sports and they're just not, finding that opportunity as of right now?
Yeah, I think it's never too late, right? If it's always easy when you start, or 18 or if you grow up knowing like, oh, I want to be a photographer, or I'm going to be in marketing and I love this. And so I think whatever niche that it is that you're excited about, but if you want to work in sports and you're not in school, or I guess we'll start with more people that are listening to this are probably in school, right? But if you want to work in sports, a great place to start is go down to the equipment room, and is just going onto your athletics website, looking at the staff directory and seeing who they are, picking up the phone if they have a phone number, or just going down there in person and just saying, I'm so and so, I've been at this school for X amount, I'm going to school for this, I want to work in sports, can I help? Can I volunteer? And I think so often, you mentioned earlier, it's like people just want to be given like the job with no work, like you see a nurse or a doctor or whatever, it's like they're doing hours and hours and hundreds of hours of on call and experience, and so like um I'll always find it interesting when people like this topic of like getting into sports. It's so hard, and I I I don't necessarily agree with that in the sense of like for me as a believer, I guess, but it's like, you're destined for something. And so like whatever you're supposed to be doing is you're gonna get to that point. And so it might not be sports, right? Like you're might not just not meant to work in sports. But if you have any sort of inclination of like, I want to do this, but like, who are you meeting? What networking events are you going to? Oh, I'm not in a sport management club, or I'm not in this. So like, that doesn't matter. Like, you can still sign up for the networking events. You can still sign up for, internships to work at, the NCAA bowl games, the championship games. Like, there's so many front off or God, what is it? Vivid Sports, maybe, no, it's not that. Living Sports, something. There's so many different networks and opportunities and things that like you just got to start. And I said this earlier where it's like it's not just the degree that you get, but like what are you doing while you're getting that degree? And so, yeah, it's tough going to school, waking up, homework, quizzes, tests, going to class, volunteering, internships and all that. Yeah, it's tough work. For 2 years, I got up at 4:30, went into school to coach basketball for an hour and a half before my classes, and then did 7 to 7:50, 8 to 8:50, 9 to 9:50. Had a break from 10 to 12. And I was thinking about this just yesterday, getting ready for our call. I was like, man, I remember sitting in the parking garage in my Jeep listening to Colin Cowherd on the radio and scarfing down my ham and turkey sandwich in my lunchbox. But I made my lunch every day, looking at money, like, man, I can't always go out to eat, whatever. But no one knows those sacrifices. Nobody sees the days you're in there where it's like this, none of this matters. Like, I'm just in a community college. I'm not going to get where I want to go. I'm freaking 28, 29 years old, right? I got to go to work tonight, and the tears and the like the hard work, man, that it takes. And then there's some you look at those and they're like right out of college, a job, internship, you know what I mean? That's great. That's their lot, right? And if that's not you, then like what are you doing to actively seek and actively progress to getting to where you want to go? And some of that times might have to be you got to work for free, right? And I've told my students this before, like, oh man, well, you got this, and now you're working ops, and you got a ring. I was like, yeah, but remember the 4 years that I worked for free at Incarnate Word? None of this happens. None of this happens if I'm not doing that. And so my advice is just be hungry, be open to opportunities, and you never know who or what. And it's so cliche. Everybody says the same thing, but it's so true. Like, you don't know who's involved or who's doing what or who's going to be around or who you're going to talk to or who you remember. But get business cards, get names, fill up your phone, text, communicate, cold call, reach out. I didn't know you before I said, hey, Vic, saw your post on LinkedIn. What's up? You need a guest? Let me know. I'm happy to share my story and happy to be some sort of encouragement or advice to those that are trying to break in. And, I would say, but if you're at school, if you're at a university right now and you haven't gone talk to anybody in, if you want to get into social media and photography, look up that area and staff, right? If you want to get into operations, look up the people that are doing operations and say, hey, can I help? Can I volunteer? Can I assist in any way? And so if there's nothing at your school, then what's around you? What semi-pro organizations are around you? What sports marketing firms are around you? What other things are there that you can do? Freelance, all of those things. It's like you got to put in the work, and it's not just going to be handed because, all right, now I got a degree, great, but like, what did you do while you were getting that? So,
Yeah, ask questions as well as be aware of people watching you around because things don't go unwatched per se. Like one thing that you could do is obviously, like you said, go to a flag office and say, hey, this is my first day on campus, but this is the most important place for me to basically wow them in a way where like, hey, I have the drive and the ambition to do this, and I'm not just gonna once a position opens up, then reach out to the person, right? Like you want to be proactive and everything. And you've said it on the podcast as well, just overall, just being able to help people. And, like you said, you reached out to me, you made the cold, LinkedIn message, I should say too. So that also helps. But, before we wrap up here, how can our listeners, reach out to you, with furthering the conversation?
Yeah, I'll text you my info as well. So there's, if you want to throw it up in the graphic at the end or something and whatever. But happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I mean, I think if you type in my full name, this picture that's behind me is actually my banner photo. So if you see that and it's me, Southern California, send me a message, send me a connection. Happy to chat there. And then can obviously give out other information if that's needed from there. But welcome to find me on Instagram. My handle is Shoemeazy, Shoemeazy. And so they're welcome to add me there. Those are really the only main two platforms that I use right now. I do have Facebook, but I haven't been on in forever. But yeah, happy to, find me on LinkedIn, or if they message you, message Vic, happy to give out my info there. But, the reason why I do this is to help. And I think my true, joy and the progression of the years of doing this is like being able to give back. And so one of my former students from East Stroudsburg is now the assistant director of event management and game ops at Vanderbilt. Another one of mine, she's getting ready to graduate. I've had a handful of students here at SC. But it's all about the next generation coming behind. And so like whatever that I can do, whatever piece of advice or just asking, guiding, being a support system, that's what I want to do. Because it isn't just like an always a straight shot where it's just like, well, I want to work in marketing. Okay, well, here's what you need to do. Well, I want to work in ticketing. Okay, well, here's what you need to do. It's a lot of just finding your niche and finding out where you work and fit in, and being available is the most important thing. So
Availability is the best possibility.
no
Uh,
doubt.
and with that, thanks, Josh, for being on the podcast here. Thanks for everyone that has been listening. Highly recommend reaching out to Josh, in general, just obviously helping yourself as well as connect with more people. This is an easy platform for us to help people network. So make that conversation, make that cold call, email. You already don't have a cold call because he's been on the podcast. You know things about him, so that's always a good sign. But with that, we'll see everyone next week.